A talented cook can transform the humble pumpkin into a pie that's good enough to eat, which is nothing compared to what a man named Carl Warner can do with it. Martha Teisner takes us grocery shopping.
If you're wondering why anybody would buy boxes of just orange fruits and vegetables, oh, with maybe a few yellow ones thrown in, we'd like to introduce you to Carl Warner, a British photographer and artist famous for his food landscapes. Yes, food.
The first one I ever did was the mushroom landscape. And beans and just these mushrooms that I found in this market that looked extraordinarily like trees.
That was in 1999. Since then, he's done a broccoli forest with its bread mountains, sugar waterfall, potato rocks, and cauliflower clouds. And this is his storm-tossed cabbage sea, the boat made out of a squash, with its green bean cabin and asparagus mast, along with the zucchini lighthouse, made a subsequent appearance in another seascape.
This is my favorite scene out of everything I've done. It's all made out of fish.
So the sea is made out of little fish?
Yeah. And because they have that lovely silveryness and they reflect the sky, they just kind of look like water at a glance.
In this underwater scene, the surface of the sea is a sheet of glass. The big pink fish is a dragon fruit. The green coral is Romanesco cauliflower. Warner has published a whole book of his food landscapes. In it, everything from the London skyline, with Big Ben made out of lemon slices, and a shredded wheat Tower Bridge rising from pineapple pilings, to Garlickshire. Self-explanatory.
Do people find it odd that a grown man
plays with his food?
Plays with his food?
My kids, they've just grown used to me. To be honest, I kind of think it's nice to hang on to a bit of your childhood.
Which is where all the orange fruits and vegetables come in. When we met him, Warner was at work on a children's book about color.
I'm going to gut this thing, Connor.
Okay.
Assisted in his London studio by his model maker, Paul Baker, who likes being called a food sculptor. Although styrofoam torturer is more like it.
I've made this sketch here which kind of basically shows the scene I'm looking to create with this little hillock with this wonderful pumpkin sitting on top. And the sides of the bank here are going to be cheese. It's going to be like an orange-coloured cheese that will have kind of been eroded away by this orange juice stream. I know, it's madness.
To turn an empty table into a fantasy in orange.
Well, you have a look, yeah.
Took 10 hours.
Yeah, that's more like it.
At first, the thing had a kind of makeshift elementary school art project look to it, but not for long.
I'm just thinking about whether we put crumbles of cheese in the river rather than the kumquats, but the kumquats are like smooth stones.
Yes, that's what grown men playing with food talk about, with a straight face.
I get really serious about these things and I can't... It's actually supposed to be fun.
Soon a little lentil pathway has appeared. This is a cheese cliff in the making.
Do you find yourself eating your
We do, yes.
output?
Yeah, we do tend to kind of get a bit peckish and it's like, no, don't touch that. So we have to be very careful the crew don't just sort of casually nibble at things that they shouldn't.
No, aren't these dried pieces?
The urge to eat the ingredients led an Italian meat company to commission an entire village fashioned from salamis and sausages and ham for an ad. Crockerville is almost entirely made out of Betty Crocker cookie mixes. Carl Warner worked in advertising for about 25 years, but art and movies often inspire his landscapes, like Cowboy Valley.
We actually used a great big ribeye steak, so it's about this big. And this is also an oxtail. And we've got this lovely wagon that's made with a tortilla shell.
Garlic, that's brilliant.
People marvel at how clever and even realistic Warner's edible landscapes can be.
Somebody came here the show 2 years ago, looked at the salmon sea, And he came past, he says, "Oh, I've been there, mate, on my holiday. I was there a couple of years ago." It's Portugal. He said, "We stayed in a villa just up the road from there. I know exactly where you took that." I said, "Unless you were living in a pasta villa with sun-dried tomato roof, I think not."
Warner lost his sense of smell a few years ago, so he didn't notice the fishy odor. Meanwhile, back at the pumpkin patch,
Have a look through the camera, see what you think. Better?
Well, you see it taking shape.
never mind how the table really looked. What mattered was that through Carl Warner's camera lens, there was a fairy tale village, a pumpkin paradise, complete with electricity. But because food spoils, it had to be captured quickly.
It's all been held together at the moment with pins and glue and things, so it's a very precarious thing, and it's a transient thing. It's gone by the end of the day.
Divvied up to be eaten or thrown out, leaving only the photograph
So the final shot.
and the fantasy.
From tiny little plate to tiny little stove, finger food of a special sort has captured the fancy of Anna Warner.
If you're hungry, how about a little lasagna, a little sushi, a little pumpkin pie? Emphasis on the word little, because these dishes barely merit a bite. It's tiny food, prepared in, what else, a tiny kitchen.
There's a 7,000 square foot soundstage where we do a lot of our productions.
The Tiny Kitchen video series comes from a company called Tastemade, based in Santa Monica. Orrin Katzoff is head of programming.
Tiny Kitchen is a show where we are cooking in a tiny kitchen set and legitimately cooking tiny foods. So whether it's tiny quesadillas, tiny tacos, tiny eggs, it really is made down to scale, meaning it's not fake bacon, it's not fake eggs. This is real food being made in a real tiny kitchen.
And people have really developed a big taste for it, viewing episodes over 600 million times in the last year and a half.
Scramble these in.
Most of Tastemade's online shows feature regular-sized foods. This idea started almost as a joke. When Jay Holzer, he's the head of development and production, bought one of his daughters a new dollhouse for Christmas.
We had to figure out something to do with the old one, so we brought it here and we built kind of the first tiny kitchen set inside of that dollhouse.
And when was the first time that somebody said, I know, let's make tiny food?
So it was probably about 2 years ago. Somebody decided, hey, let's play with tiny food. And so we made a tiny burger, a tiny plate of spaghetti, and a tiny stack of pancakes that day.
And of course, if you cook small, you need tiny utensils, like these miniature knives sent over from Japan, a place, it should be noted, where all things cute, kawaii is their word for it, is all the rage. Turns out, people worldwide love it too. There are now tiny kitchens producing food and videos in 5 countries, and all over social media. Why the fascination?
There's almost this feeling of disbelief. I can't believe that they're actually making this dish that I'm used to seeing as normal size.
Do people think it's easy?
I think so. I mean, I think, and that's kind of part of the magic, right? It's like, it's a little bit mind-blowing, it's a little bit brain-tingling, and you feel like, I want to know how to do that. That doesn't seem that hard.
You're saying this is a lot tougher than it looks.
It is a lot tougher than it looks.
He's got that right.
You have this teeny little spatula. This is a fork, right?
Right.
The company set us up with their resident tiny food chef.
Do you guys get all that?
Really what they call a food stylist, Hannah Offmuth, who offered to show me how to make a tiny donut. Just a simple little donut.
You have this little egg.
It's a quail egg, in case you're wondering.
Stab it with the knife.
What if I stab my finger?
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
There you go.
Oh my God, I did it.
Mix with some flour and milk, then deep fry it on a tiny stove.
There you go.
Ooh, look at that.
How hard could it be?
There's my frosting.
Sprinkles.
My sprinkles. Are they supposed to stick?
Yeah.
My miniature donut versus hers.
Oh, yeah, that's not even fair.
I've had a lot of practice.
So now we're gonna try this?
Mm-hmm.
tiny food,
Yours are better.
big production.
Oh no, you're gonna hand me a tiny mop next.
Something is always brewing in Gerard Tonti's studio.
Well, I thought it might be fun to kind of push the limits a little bit.
Literally, he paints with coffee and tea.
You are aware they do sell paints like in a tube.
Just not as fun.
This graphic designer used to paint the old-fashioned way, until the day he became fascinated by his cup of green tea.
And I thought, well, I wonder if I can make this into a painting medium, what that would be like.
Browns and greens were easy enough, but keeping other colors stable, not so much.
What's the hardest color to make stick?
Hardest color to make stick is probably the reds.
Are you still working on mastering the reds?
I recently have just got it.
You
I just got it. So
after how many years?
Well, the whole process has been about 10 years. So now I have a full color spectrum. So I can get things like flesh tones. I can get purples, silvers, grays, blacks, whites, the whole works.
Getting all those colors requires Tonti to buy coffee and tea from around the world, shipped to his home outside Pittsburgh, that he shares with his wife and 2 children.
This is the tea that you only get from Thailand,
So,
right?
yes, it's dried blue flowers.
Mm-hmm. It's blue, all right. Okay, here we go. It tastes good. It's a really delicate flavor. So this essentially is your blue. There is no other tea that gives you this color that you need?
No.
The actual painting requires a bit of a juggling act in Tonti's basement studio, which doubles as a sort of chemistry lab.
So what I'll do is I'll set the easels up, work on a piece. You can see I have several going at the same time, but I'm actually brewing and making paint as I'm working.
It's like you're cooking and painting at the same time.
Look closely. That textured surface? It's actually coffee grounds. And it's a good guess that with all that caffeine around, Tonti's art will keep percolating.
Anybody ever say, why do you do that?
Sure, all the time.
How do you answer that?
For me, it's all about the challenge. It's been about the process and the challenge. So if somebody can, look at a piece and it makes them feel warm, like, a warm cup of coffee in a coffee shop, I think the job's done.
Moscow, Idaho was named not for the city in Russia, but the one in Pennsylvania. Peculiar, right? So it should come as no surprise that Moscow, Idaho is home to artist Roger Rowley, whose medium is fruit plates? Weird. Till you see them.
When you see this, it's like an explosion.
And then you say, wow.
And that's sort of what I was imagining, to have this thing be overwhelming as a visual experience.
Like a giant kaleidoscope or intricate stained glass windows.
They're arranged starting from the earliest one in January is the upper left, and they go down through the columns all the way to the end of December.
A calendar of color.
It goes from relatively warm yellows and oranges into the deep, rich blues and dark berries. So there is this rainbow, and immediately that sense of the seasons is apparent.
Up close, each one has an odd detail to reveal, or a story to tell.
What's this one with this black blob at the top?
My cat loves melon. It just happened to get right up there right when I had the camera ready. And so it was like, fine, BB, here you go, snap.
So why fruit plates? 10 years ago, when this all began, the answer was simple: to convince his kids to eat fruit. The rule he set for himself: nothing too fancy.
I wasn't trying to pick the perfect fruit. I was trying to be true to what it is you buy in the store at the farmer's market. Those are a little sweeter, but I think...
But the Saturday market in Moscow, Idaho, is loaded with some of the most luscious fruit imaginable.
Do you ever look at the shapes and the colors of the things that are available in terms of this is my paint and these are my pigments?
Yeah, I certainly am. Oh, the orange of an apricot will look amazing against the blue of a blueberry.
The market just happens to be next to the gallery where the fruit plates were being shown.
Look at that blood orange right there.
People do make the connection between what's outside and what's inside. No accident, since Roger Rowley is its director.
I think this is a true artist who can figure out how to make art out of their kids' breakfast plates.
That is the question after all. When does a plate of fruit stop being breakfast and start being art?
I'd put it on the breakfast table and it would get eaten or not eaten, and then began to just be more conscious about arranging it and going, well, let's make this look nice. Maybe then the kids will eat it more if they see this thing that looks aesthetically interesting. It was maybe at least a year of me doing that before I ever took a photograph.
By then, Roger could see the whole project in his mind. Hundreds of fruit plates photographed in exactly the same way at his back door. He takes his pictures snapshot style, capturing shadows, reflections. The seasons, the weather, leave their signature on his work.
You didn't go through any kind of agony of making art.
Oh, no. No, it's very intuitive. I mean, you start with the natural forms, whether it's an apple or a pear or apricot, and so you have these natural building blocks.
Leaving one more question. When does a plate of fruit stop being art and start being breakfast?
He's a cutting-edge photographer who routinely cooks up a feast for the eyes. He shares his secrets with our David Pogue.
Former Microsoft executive Nathan Myhrvold is a man of many talents.
I've got advanced degrees in many things, economics, geophysics, and space physics. I was a postdoctoral researcher with Stephen Hawking. I publish on all aspects of dinosaurs. Have been doing a lot of asteroid work recently. I'm also the CEO at Intellectual Ventures, invents new technology that try to help the developing world.
That zigzagging career path brought Myhrvold to his latest passion.
This whole camera system I built.
Taking eye-popping portraits.
That's pretty good.
Of food.
And the first thing that surprises people is blueberries are not blue
yeah.
on the inside.
Yeah. The food photography is a spin-off of an earlier project, his 2011 magnum opus, a 50-pound, $625 encyclopedic cookbook called Modernist Cuisine.
After I retired from Microsoft, I wanted to do more cooking. And so I really naively thought, well, there must be some big book of modern cooking. No. So I wound up writing it.
You mean them? The books became influential among chefs, but a lot of people seemed most interested in the pictures. And when Myhrvold researched photography books, he noticed something.
There are some topics that are very well covered. So nude photography of women is a giant category.
Shocker.
Food photography is just not something that has been embraced in the same way.
Sure, plenty of people take pictures of their food with their phones at lunch.
This is the mayhem switch.
But when Nathan Myhrvold takes pictures of food...
So the idea here is someone is pounding their beer down onto the table and making a hell of a mess.
Normal photographers use tripods. Myhrvold builds robots.
Because we wanted to control the timing, we built SaberBot.
When Myhrvold wanted to photograph two liquids mixing in midair, there was only one solution.
Oh, of course. Another bot. Yes, so here, gravity causes this to fall, and then at just the right time, this thing jams a needle into it, breaks the balloon, and you get pretty much a ball of liquid.
So robots give you the repetition capability and the precision to get the shots you want.
That's right.
The photos are in his new book, The Photography of Modernist Cuisine. And Myhrvold also has art galleries just for his food photos in Las Vegas, New Orleans, and Seattle. His photographs sell for as much as $1,000 each. But, as Myhrvold is the first to admit, it's not about profit. It's about passion.
I think that food as art is tremendously underserved. So I'm gonna make some that I love, and I'm gonna hope somebody else agrees.
Call it a little Japanese kitchen magic. Green goop is transformed into a head of lettuce. A tempting tray of sushi won't lose its appeal for years. And this mackerel has never seen a grill.
Where do you see fake food in Japan?
See it in department stores, in shopping malls, in underground shopping areas, in touristy places such as this. You see it everywhere.
Ohio native Justin Hannes showed us around his adopted home city of Osaka. Known as Japan's food capital, fake or sample food abounds here too.
Fake food overcomes a language barrier?
Exactly.
You point to it and say, this is what I want.
Exactly. And that's how it's been in this country for 70, 80 years.
Across Japan, realistic-looking food displays are used by restaurants to demonstrate portion size and are laid out to try to lure customers.
It's really an advertising tool.
Oh, exactly.
Hannes sells plastic food via his website and claims if you can cook it, they can make a replica that looks good enough to eat. That's thanks to his manufacturer, 60-year-old artisan Fumio Marino.
Why has this fake food taken root here in Japan?
Western-style dishes were introduced to Japan and customers were unfamiliar with them, so they didn't sell well, he explained. Today, I think it's as useful as ever. At his Osaka workshop, we found a sumptuous spread of treats, all completely inedible, of course. It is remarkable craftsmanship, though, which Marino first learned from his dad.
Wow.
My father always said, before you eat something, observe it, he remembered. Study its color, patterns, and then you can dig in. Making it look just right takes a lot of trial and error. It turns out panko coating for shrimp looks best if it's made from polyvinyl chloride, or soba soup broth from urethane. Kiwi seeds can be created by permanent marker, and getting beef to the perfect temperature is more airbrush than oven. Marino told us it can take 10 years to master this.
Oh, it just blows all off.
That made me feel a bit better with my attempt at shrimp tempura.
My tempura looks a little sad.
Each piece is handcrafted, a sort of artisanal plastic. It seems machines just can't make it look so real.
How expensive is plastic food?
It can get pretty pricey, anywhere from $70 on up. But the benefit there is, if you leave it outside, it should last for at least 7 years in all weather conditions. 7 years, it's not going to budge.
Hannes says souvenirs, from keychains to magnets, make up most of his business. But buying fake food is not just for the casual collector.
Sushi, rice. Tiramisu, yeah.
Meet Akiko Obata. She showed us the room her husband won't enter. I sit here relaxing, she told us. I add new items and just look at my collection. It's really quite something. She's decorated the walls with pizza, and drawers are filled with creme brulee. Seated on a burger and a piece of cake, we chatted about her hobby.
Why did you start collecting food, plastic food of all things?
I always thought plastic food samples were only available for people in the food industry, she told us. But when I found out they were available for a housewife like me, I started buying them. She has no idea how much she's spent, though doesn't dispute estimates of more than $80,000.
Do people think you're crazy?
I'm not aware of that, she chuckled. Well, it landed her a place in the Guinness Book of World Records for having more than 8,000 pieces of plastic-prepared food items. Who knew there was such a category? While Obata may have taken it to another level, we found this fake food is undoubtedly appealing, and there's something almost enchanting about these handmade, delicious-looking morsels you'd never dare to eat.
Pumpkins are part of the squash family, get most of the press this time of year. But what about all those gorgeous gourds? Martha Teichner is here to give them equal time.
Lagenaria ciceraria. That's Latin for bottle gourd. What members of the gourd chorus happen to be wearing. It seems gourd fanatics can't take themselves too seriously. Just ask the leader of the parade, Graham Ottoson.
You do require a sense of humor. Yeah.
Ottoson presides over Gourdlandia, a not quite quarter-acre world of its own, just outside Ithaca, New York.
All gourds, all the time. People come in here and they say, "Oh my gourd, it's gorgeous."
G-O-U-R-D.
G-O-U-R-D.
What is it about gourds that strikes your fancy?
I think the very first thing that I noticed is the shape. I just recently did a photo shoot with a neighbor of mine who's 39 weeks pregnant. It's striking how similar the curves are between a pregnant woman's belly and a gourd.
Ottoson would see the connection. For 25 years, she was a midwife. Now she births gourds and waits for inspiration.
I'm looking at a gourd and saying, how are you going to be a lamp? Lamps are my favorite thing to make, but obviously sometimes I have to listen if it wants to be Bob Gordon.
That's Bob there. At Gourdlandia, lots of gourds have wanted to be turned into creatures never seen in real life. But from birdhouses to bowls, nightlights to musical instruments, there are loads of possibilities, many for sale in the Gourdlandia Gallery. Graham Ottoson does not sell online.
They are the only member of the squash family that has that nice hard shell when it dries. You can carve it, you can paint it, you can do pretty much anything you can do with wood. The ones here are the umbilical gourds. These are Indonesian bottles. That is an extra long handled dipper gourd. There's about 12 different varieties that I'm growing this year. That's where we planted it, and then this vine, it's obviously stretched as far as those dipper gourds, and then all the way, you can see them.
My God, there must be 50
I know.
on one plant.
Now, so the ones
Once a vine is off and running, growing as much as a foot a day, it still has to withstand pests. In central New York, the cucumber beetle, Graham Ottoson's #1 enemy. Listen to that maniacal laugh. If it makes it to fall, a gourd is still a season away from becoming a lamp. This must be 5 to 10 pounds.
Yeah. All winter long, all of these green gourds were drying. Then in the springtime, they all looked like this.
It's ounces.
Yeah, it doesn't weigh anything now.
It doesn't even weigh a pound. Then it's time for a bath. Scrubbing away the outer skin transforms a gourd into a blank canvas.
Use the bigger drill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Visit Gourdlandia, and Graham Ottoson will happily unlock your inner gourd artist. She'll be teaching online classes next year. This part looks like a nose.
It looks very much like a nose.
When it was my turn, I did not make a nightlight.
I'm so glad you have a vision for this.
Does it look mildly deranged? I decided that it looks like if Charlie Brown got electrocuted.
What would the American Gourd Society think? Its official membership, 2,000 Gordians, is that what they're called? In 21 states. Would they approve of my creation? Or just say, you're out of your gourd?
Yeah.
Our David Pogue has discovered an artful dimension to that familiar toast. Bottoms up.
At this photography exhibit in Las Vegas, you might not know right away what you're looking at.
I would think this one would be like a cross-section of tree.
I'd say in this one, I see something, maybe a moon effect or planet.
But in fact, these are photos of evaporated whiskey crud.
So the title of the project is Vanishing Spirits, the dried remains of single malt scotch. After you've taken that last drop or that last sip of whiskey, the residue dries in the bottom of the glass and leaves me these wonderful patterns.
Ernie Button's day job is speech pathology, but his hobbies include photography and drinking Scotch whiskey in the evening. That's how this whole thing began in 2008.
And when I went to collect the glasses in the morning, I noticed this film in the bottom of the glass. And when I held it up to the light, I saw these fine repetitive patterns in the bottom of the glass. I'm like, I can try and do something with this.
So tell me about the color. The whiskey didn't look like that.
It did not. I put different colored lights, different colored gels in from behind. So that's what's giving the purple and the blues and the orange.
And before you do that, what would it look like?
It would look relatively whitish gray. So yeah, nature is giving me the pattern, I'm giving it the life.
These days, he experiments with different kinds of drinking glasses, sheets of glass, and whiskeys from different parts of the world. Have you ever tried chocolate milk? Have you ever tried 7-Up, you know?
I've tried a lot of different alcohols. I found that they have to be aged in a cask. So they have to be in a wooden cask, you know, taking in, you know, all the organic material from the wood into that spirit that was put in there. Tequila, that will work. That will give me some interesting images. Vodka won't.
I mean, you have an area of knowledge that probably nobody in the world has.
Yeah, not sure what to do with it, but...
In fact, he's done plenty with it. His whiskey photos have been featured in the New York Times and in National Geographic. They inspired a published scientific paper. And they're published in a coffee table art book. Is there a takeaway? Is there a lesson?
The ignored or the overlooked can have relevance, can have interest. If you don't look around, if you don't pay attention to the really small things in life, you could miss out on something really big.
Pies that take the cake. But don't take our word for it. Connor Knighton has proof.
This is Lauren Coe. This is Lauren Coe's Kitchen. And this is the popular Instagram account Loco Kitchen, where Coe posts photos of the gorgeous pies and tarts she whips up at home in Seattle.
Initially, I got into it really for the design of it. I loved creating. I've always had an appreciation for art and good design, and it just so happened that pie was a really great medium.
A great edible medium. Coe, who has zero culinary training and baked her first pie just 4 years ago, turns a few simple ingredients into complex works of art. It all began with this photo of a peach pie. Coe only had 100 or so followers at the time, but the picture got 5 times as many likes.
So where did those likes come from? Who were they?
I have no idea. Maybe they were bots or trolls and thought maybe I should put my account back on private.
But Coe kept posting, and the likes kept coming. People were sharing her designs. She now has more than 350,000 followers.
It was mostly just kind of overwhelming. I'm pretty shy, I'm pretty introverted.
Coe struck a chord with her bright colors, repetitive patterns, and clean lines. It's a unique style she calls pieometry.
I feel like it kind of encapsulates this genre of modern pie art that I've kind of pioneered. Is that bad? I know, there's something very demoralizing about saying puns out loud, even though I write them so often.
Yeah, we need to talk about the puns. I'm glad you went there. Coe's captions, eat your tart out, all strings considered, are always pie pun hot. Since her first post contained a pun, Co figured she shouldn't mess with a good thing.
People responded so well to that post. I thought, are they responding to the pie? Are they responding to the caption? Maybe both together. So I just kind of kept going in that vein.
It's not all jokes, though. Last year, Co collaborated with ad agency BBDO on a series called My American Pie, creating pies inspired by a diverse array of American experiences.
I got to make a pie inspired by their story, by their heritage, by kind of the things that they shared.
This pie, blue and white like the Honduran flag and Chinese porcelain, represents Co's American experience as the daughter of Honduran and Chinese immigrants. It's photographed in its unbaked state. Co does that a lot with her work, a choice she's learned can elicit some crusty reactions. Critics feel like that's somehow cheating.
Obviously, the designs are most pristine before they go in the oven. And I kind of personally feel like the transformation of an art piece doesn't really take away from its aesthetics or its kind of value, even if it changes along its journey.
Which, in fairness, if you put a Van Gogh in the oven, it's going to look different too.
Yeah, and that's what I say. If I sit in the oven for an hour at 400 degrees, I'm going to look a little bit different when I come out.
Now those curious about what Co's designs look like baked can find out for themselves. She recently released a pieometry cookbook. Pie art is now a full-time job for her.
One of the biggest ironies of this journey is that I don't really have a sweet tooth, and I don't actually love eating pies all that much.
So, Co gives away most of her creations to friends via an email list she's dubbed the Pipeline. It may be art, but it's still meant to be eaten.
Especially in this year where we're not having a lot of person-to-person interactions, it's been a good way to kind of share what I'm making and bringing a little bit of joy to people around me.